Francisco is now becoming known for homelessness.
It's awful, it's dirty.
Tent camps and street crime.
There is a ton of drug use out in the open.
Markeisha Law and her public works crews are doing some housekeeping. They pick up blood-spattered drug syringes.
This box, it got over 100+ needles in it.
Hose down feces and urine.
How you doing in there?
And this is just one homeless camp out of dozens throughout San Francisco.
And joining us now from the city by the bay, Christine Hughes, chairman of the Republican Party there. So why are the homeless flocking to San Francisco in the first place?
Well, it's been going on for years, Bill. I'm a third-generation native San Franciscan, and we've always had chronic homelessness, but never to this extent. And it's really, the bottom line is, it's with the liberal permissive policies that have encouraged more homeless to not only camp out in San Francisco, but be very aggressive in terms of their behavior without any repercussions.
Why do they come there, though? Do they receive money, welfare? Is it easier to be on the dole there? I mean, there must be a reason.
Well, there's many what I call accommodating strategies that the city spends probably $30,000 to $60,000 per homeless person. And what happens is that the homeless feel they're treated, in some instances, Bill, better than a citizen, a resident of San Francisco.
So what do they get for the 30 to 60K? I mean, get food stamps. What else do they get?
Well, they can get, there's a whole network of nonprofits that have become what I would say institutionalized in San Francisco. So they can go and get food, they can go and get temporary shelter, they can get medical care, they can get all these types of services and yet just go in and out. They get some services, they go back on the street. They go back in, they go back on the street.
Right. It's
a chronic situation and there's been no real hardcore solutions.
Now,
and the other interesting thing is, because it's so chronic now, the attitude of the Board of Supervisors is that they want to give the homeless the opportunity to be told that they're going to be moving. They have time before their camps are going to be moved. There's no toughness in terms of dealing with this as really a public safety issue in the city.
All right.
It should be dealt with like any other situation that involves crime or abuse or violence.
All the reports are that not all the homeless do this, but a lot of them expose themselves and do things in public that are gross, and it's a public health issue, and tourists are assaulted by panhandlers, and the property crime is through the roof. All of that true?
It is true, and I will tell you myself, 2 weeks ago, downtown at 9 a.m. in the morning in Union Square, which is the main shopping area, a homeless man dropped his pants, turned around, and proceeded to urinate and spray all over me.
And what did you say to that man?
There's nothing I could do. I couldn't call the police because the police will not come. They'll tell you, was anybody injured? If no one is injured, they will not respond.
So
there is nothing you can do.
So that kind of extreme behavior is now normal for San Francisco?
Well, it's pretty uncivilized, but is becoming the norm because the homeless now are more defiant because they realize that there are no repercussions for this.
Right.
This is absolutely
nobody holding them
unacceptable.
accountable for whatever they do. If they want to shoot up drugs, if they want to have sex in public, if they want to defecate in public, if they want to assault you, because that's assault, Ms. Hughes, what happened to you. You could have called the police and said, I've been assaulted. But, you know, look, I don't live there. I just know that this situation is way out of control. And
let's start with that one big number. $241 million. Now, of that, $50 million funds shelters and another $50 million fund health services for the truly homeless. But the single most important thing to know about that $241 million is that most of it has absolutely nothing to do with the people we see on the streets.
That is a great observation. I think it's missed by many in the city. We're not spending $241 million a year on the 7,000 or 8,000 people who are homeless in San Francisco. We're spending more than half of that money, actually, to keep people in permanent housing.
That's right, $140 million worth of the entire homeless budget houses approximately 9,000 people. And those are 9,000 people we don't even count as homeless.
It's like all of our hotels, people who've lived in housing for 10 years are in the homeless budget. So people will say, well, we don't notice it. But if we didn't spend that money, you'd notice it because the numbers would be off the charts.
So that leaves us with these 6,686 people we do count as homeless, and they fall into two separate categories: those in some kind of temporary shelter and those who actually live on the street.
Art Agnos and Feinstein were cool.
And two perfect examples of this walked right up to us while we were interviewing former Mayor Art Agnos. First is Lee, who might look like he lives on the street.
Well, I got a room.
And then there's Ron.
Why aren't you living in a room or of some kind now?
Well, I tried in North Beach, for example.
And at that point, we had some vintage impromptu Agnos.
I'll take you there.
Really? In Mission Street?
I'll take you to the diagnostic center.
And just like that, Ron was in the car with the former mayor and off to the Mission Neighborhood Resource Center. If you want a shelter bed in San Francisco, this is where you have to go, and you've got to be willing to play by the city's rules.
You have to do finger imaging and all this stuff to get an emergency shelter bed.
So a lot of people, like Richard here, make another choice.
So you choose not to go to the shelters?
Well, sure, partner. Come on, man. Have you actually been in some of these places?
Clearly, we're not meeting the demands that people have on the streets.
Want to make this even more complicated? San Francisco manages all of this through at least 8 different city departments, issuing some 400 contracts with at least 75 private organizations. A tangled network of services with no unifying oversight by the city that actually hands out most of the money.
The one area where we have not done as good of a job as we need to is really coordinating all of those systems.
Here's one little scenario for you. A man with mental health challenges is staying in a nonprofit or a charity shelter until one day he voluntarily checks out, lands in some trouble, lands in the custody of law enforcement, who takes him to a hospital where he spends some time in a psych ward. Now, in each one of these 3 cases, it can be recorded as a by-the-book acceptable outcome, even though the guy is back out on the street. And the city has no single unified way of tracking any of this, as people simply ricochet between service providers.
And if you're a provider, it's difficult to know what other services that individual or families are receiving.
Then there's another immense challenge facing San Francisco. Even if we could convince all of these people to accept help, our best services do not scale to the overwhelming demand.
Navigation centers do a good job for those they serve, but the numbers are so small. You're talking about 50 people here. Come on, you're talking about a 6,000 person problem.
So how do we ever start to untangle all of this with results we can actually see?
That's a great question, and I think really the only way that we're going to change people's perception is by making progress.
All right, now that gentleman, Jeff Kaczynski, is the man who is supposed to whip this whole system into shape. And tomorrow night, right here at 6 o'clock, we'll show you how he plans to do that. Now, if you're fed up with the situation on our sidewalks and you want to see some changes, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised with what he has to say, because this guy is not messing around.
You know, all the best of luck to him, because others have come into this city and into the Bay Area and have tried. I've seen this story reported on for almost 40 years, and there's never been a solution. I'm so glad we're doing something. I'm so glad you're working on this. I got to see what he has to say, because I've heard others say they could fix it, and they couldn't.
He talks tough, and I mean it. I think a lot of people will hear this guy tomorrow night and say, you know what? It's about time.
Okay. Good. Looking forward to it. Wilson, thanks so much. Well, you'll be hearing a lot more about homelessness this week as we join other media outlets for the San Francisco Homeless Project. So, as we said, more to come.